It was close to midnight when Daniel pulled into the Greyhound station in a small town in West Virginia. He had missed his earlier bus to Pittsburgh, and the clerk at the counter told him there was one last bus that ran this route. "Strange old bus," the clerk muttered, "but it'll get you where you're going." When the bus arrived, it looked ancient. The paint was chipped, headlights dim, and the engine groaned like it hadn't been serviced in decades. Still, he climbed aboard. Inside, the air was cold, too cold. The seats were filled with passengers, but they were all unnervingly silent. Every face was pale, eyes glassy, staring straight ahead. Daniel hesitated before sitting next to an older man in a black trench coat. The man didn't look at him, didn't even blink. Daniel tried to break the silence. "Strange crowd tonight," he said with a nervous chuckle. The man finally turned his head, his voice low and metallic. "You shouldn't have boarded this bus." Daniel frowned. "Why is that?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he tilted his head toward the window. Daniel looked outside, and his blood ran cold. The bus wasn't driving past highways or gas stations. Instead, the road stretched into an endless forest, trees dead and twisted, their branches scraping against the sides of the bus like skeletal fingers. The night sky glowed a deep, unnatural red. "This isn't the way to Pittsburgh," Daniel whispered. His phone had no signal. When he opened the camera to check, his reflection on the black screen smiled back at him, though his own lips hadn't moved. Suddenly, the speakers above crackled with static, followed by a distorted voice. "Next stop, Black Hollow. All souls alight." The passengers, who had been still as statues, began moving. They stood together in jerky, unnatural motions, their heads all turning at once toward the front of the bus. Their eyes glowed faintly white in the dark. Daniel's heart thundered in his chest. He reached for his backpack, ready to jump off at the next stop. But the man in the trench coat grabbed his arm with icy fingers. "You don't get off unless they let you," the man hissed. "And you don't belong here. You're still alive." The bus screeched to a halt. Outside, the stop wasn't a station. It was a cemetery. Tombstones stretched across the land, glowing faintly under the red sky. Hooded figures with lanterns waited along the path, their faces hidden behind grotesque masks carved into wide, toothy grins. The passengers shuffled off the bus, one by one, walking straight into open graves that swallowed them whole. Daniel tried to run, but the trenchcoat man blocked him. He raised his head, and his face was no longer human, just a hollow skull with burning eyes. "You boarded the midnight bus, Daniel," the man said. "And now it's your turn to ride forever." Daniel screamed and shoved past him, tumbling into the graveyard. The ground cracked beneath his feet, skeletal hands clawing at his legs, dragging him down. His eyes darted to a tombstone right in front of him. Carved into the stone were the words, "Daniel Reeds died tonight." The last thing he saw was the bus pulling away, its headlights fading into the red fog. The trenchcoat man stood at the window, lifting his hat in a mocking salute. Then the bus was gone. The next morning, the Greyhound clerk at the station shook his head. Daniel's bag still sat on the bench, untouched. The CCTV showed him sitting alone in the waiting area, until exactly midnight, when he simply vanished into thin air. There was no record of any midnight bus scheduled that night, because the midnight bus to Black Hollow had been shut down over 60 years ago.